My name is Uzachi Nachi. I go to St. Mary's in Berkeley, and I'm a senior. We acknowledge all those who live the tradition, all those who speak the truth, all those who do justice, and all those who honor ancestors and elders. We acknowledge those who cherish and challenge children, all those who care for the vulnerable, all those who seek to have a right relationship with God and the environment, and all those who resist wrong and constantly raise the good. We acknowledge our family, our community, and people who embrace this tradition, this celebration, as a reaffirmation of family, community, and culture.
Welcome, St. Columba family. For the past year, several youth and young adults in the St. Columba Church community have taken steps to develop and sharpen their advocacy skills. We have been supported by St. Columba Health Ministry, the local organizing committee of our church, the Knights and Ladies of St. Peter Claver, and other church ministries. We thank, acknowledge, and celebrate the support and encouragement that we receive from a grant awarded to the Health Cabinet from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development to help us strengthen our voice, to impact and direct discussions in our community. As we studied and investigated our concerns and collected materials to educate ourselves, we identified you as community leaders whom we respect and support. We acknowledge your leadership and care for our community and the concerns of young people and all people. I would, at this time, like for our guests to please stand and give your name and area of expertise or responsibility. But first, I don't believe I introduced myself. My name is Cynthia Ezeokoli. I just recently graduated from UC Riverside this past June with a double degree in psychology and African American studies.
Good afternoon. I'm Nate Miley, Alameda County Supervisor. Was there anything else I was supposed to do? Okay, Nate Miley, Alameda County Supervisor.
My name is Howard Thurman, and I'm with Bay Area Community Services, and they're located in downtown Oakland. We deal with about 137 beds. We have a facility that has about 137 beds, and I have a staff, well, not a staff, but about 45 people that are clients that I service on a daily basis. So that's where I am at.
Hi, my name is Christian Spencer, and I'm a senior at Oakland Tech. This conference and our logo represents our community, our current America rising from the ashes of our current public policies. We are guided by the voices of youth and young adults standing on the shoulders of lessons provided by our ancestors. Some of the topics covered are collective responsibilities for homeless children and adults, bridging the achievement gap and comfort gap for students of color in educational institutions, and the need for cooperative economics and government policies, net neutrality. This event sponsored with funding by Catholic Campaign for Human Development.
As we face the future, we are hopeful, inspired, and powerful. Our purpose, NIA, to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. We lead, but we understand. We stand on the shoulders of young people who have led movements for change. We stand on the shoulders of our ancestors of blood and faith. Imani, to believe with all our hearts in our greatness, in our people, in our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. We are the present hope rising from the current mistakes, greed, intolerance, and compromises that fail to confirm that our lives matter. We recognize that our voices matter as we seek creative solutions. Kumbha, creativity. To do always as much as we can, in the way we can, in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. Our solutions require our collective work and responsibility. Ujima, collective work and responsibility. To build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems, and to solve them together.
Today, we welcome all who have embraced our purpose for this day. We acknowledge the genuine presence of community members who are seated in front of us. So as the community, I would like for us to repeat after me or just respond in reference to, the presentation. We welcome your trust. We share your purpose. We support the collective creativity and the need for our collective efforts. Thank you.
We remind ourselves of our strategy success. We strive to create solutions not by creating division, but by creating dialogue. Our response does not signal agreement, but is recognition that we are listening and are willing to work together to clarify our issues, promote understanding, and to work toward solutions. Please repeat after me. Harambe, Harambe, let's pull together. Please utilize one of your index cards to capture the questions that arise and/or note ideas that may lead to community solutions.
Our first speaker is Christopher Rudolph. Please repeat after me. Harambe, let's pull together.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Christopher. Oh, people can hear? Yes. Okay, good. Hello, everyone. I'm Christopher Rudolph. I am a member of the St. Columbia Youth Group, administrator of that, and I also a recent graduate from California State University, East Bay in Hayward, and with a degree in history. And today I'll be telling you all about some. Oh, whoops, this thing's off. Okay. Some parts about the California government. Specifically, so the more unique parts of the California State Constitution, which are the parts that relate to direct democracy, which is the proposition process, the referendum process, and the recall process. So, what are these things? Well, the proposition process allows citizens to propose new laws. And how it works is that if you want something changed and you want it to be a law, what you do is you gather signatures. Then, once you get enough signatures, you send it to the Secretary of State office. The Secretary of State office then approves it. Well, if the signatures are legitimate, then it's approved, and then it's put in front of voters during the next general election. And if it gets enough votes, then it will pass, and then your thing becomes law. And yeah. And another process is the referendum process. The referendum process is very similar to the proposition process, But what it is that you get signatures, you send it to Secretary of State office, just like Secretary of State office, just like the proposition. But unlike a proposition which is adding laws, a referendum is for if you want to take away a law. So if you see a law that you want to be eliminated, you use the referendum process to eliminate it. And the third part that is also direct democracy is the recall process, which is similar to the other two processes. You get signatures, Secretary of State office, voters, but what it does is it allows you to eliminate a elected official or justice from the state Supreme Court and then if they get enough votes, then that person is recalled during the next election. But these processes aren't perfect. There is a chance for error, just like what we saw with Prop 13 in '98. So Prop 13, it was originally passed because due to skyrocketing property taxes, and it did succeed in lowering property taxes, but what it ended up doing was creating a really weird income situation for the California school system, because the California school system during this time and during now too is heavily reliant on property taxes. So with the property taxes super low, the school system went from being, as you can see in the other graph, tuitions went from being below $2,000 to being as high as, as high as $10,000 or $6,000 and it also created a situation like, as you can see with this other one, which is that businesses that have been in California for a really long time, before Prop 13 went into effect back in the 70s, their property taxes are low, but if you just moved here or if you didn't own anything in the 1970s, your property taxes is done to current levels, so you end up paying more than a company like Disneyland, which pays at a lower percentage rate. But the proposition process doesn't only lead to mistakes; it can also do some good too. So this is Prop 20 and Prop 20 and Prop 11, what both of these ended up doing is it allowed California to have an independent redistricting commission because every 10 years, when there's a census, the states get to redraw the congressional lines. And in a lot of states, like what you get stuff like, as you can see on the picture that looks super crazy, that's in Pennsylvania, what happens is that politicians are able to draw the maps as they see fit, so they try to draw it in order to keep themselves in power, their political party in power. But in California, what we do is we have a redistricting commission, which it just looks at the population census, nothing else, nothing more, that's it. And then it draws the congressional districts based on the population. So that's how our state looks pretty, they look like puzzle pieces, not like crazy like in Pennsylvania. So this is an example of how the system can be used for good. So why am I telling you all this? Well, the system isn't perfect, but it can also do some good. The most important part is that you research effectively what each proposition do and then use your voice and your ability to influence the government wisely. So, and yeah. All right. I forgot Prop 13.
Thank you, Christopher, for that. Great takeaway from that is to vote, just like the sign says right there. Our next speaker is Chibuzo Ezeokoli, and he will be presenting to us on net neutrality.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chibuzo Ezeokoli, and I'm a recent graduate from Oakland Technical High School and currently enrolled at Contra Costa College. And my topic is net neutrality, which is connected to government law. So first, what is net neutrality? So net neutrality is the principle that all internet service providers like Comcast, Verizon, or AT&T should enable equal access to websites, applications, regardless of the source, and without blocking or favoring specific content. So this extends to throttling speeds of a website to holding content behind the paywall. And to better explain this, I will be showing a video called Burger Neutrality. And as you're watching, please put yourselves into the customer's shoes and reflect on how this would affect your lives in terms of internet usage. And we are not in any way sponsored by Burger King.
There was? With net neutrality, some people, for what it's worth, just,
I don't know exactly what it is.
Got a number one. Hey, how you doing?
You know what? Number 98, what's going on with it?
Number 98. You got the Whopper? So you got the slow access Whopper pass? It's on the menu right there with the fast, medium, and slow. Slow MBPS, fast MBPS, or hyper fast MBPS. MBPS, of course, standing for making burgers per second.
So if we want a Whopper now, we have to pay $26.
Well, that's how you get it fast. That's the highest priority.
This is like a lane
It's gonna be like 15, fast lane, slow lane. It's like maybe like 15, 20 minutes.
What are you talking about?
Burger King Corporation believes that they can sell more and make more money selling like chicken sandwiches and chicken fries, so now they're slowing down the access to the Whopper. Were you given an option of chicken sandwich or?
I don't want a chicken sandwich. I really want a Whopper.
Do you have any Whoppers ready that aren't?
Yeah. The sandwich is ready. I'm just not allowed to actually get it to you.
What? You can't give me the sandwich? It's ready, but you can't give it to me?
Whopper neutrality was repealed. They voted on it.
What?
Unfortunately, I have no other choice.
Oh, God, this is the worst thing I've ever heard of.
See, like he got the fast, and now he's kidding.
Are you kidding me? You paid $26 for a Whopper?
Yeah, he ordered it. Now he's a higher priority. So.
Guys, like, I want a burger, man.
If you'd like,
This is a bad dream right now. I just want a burger, brother. A burger.
you want
I feel like I'm going to fix. This is crazy.
Here's what I'll do. You have the bag. And I can put it in the bag in 42 seconds. Hold on. 10 seconds. We don't make the rules.
You just enforce these ridiculous rules?
Fortunately, we have to.
Come on.
I felt like I was being taken advantage of in a sense. Just as a customer coming in to get their food, it felt like a power move.
They already changed the policies overnight or whatever.
I didn't think that ordering a Whopper would really open my eyes up to net neutrality.
The Whopper actually taught me about net neutrality. Stupid, but true.
So as you can see, this is an example of how laws can be changed rather quickly without the public knowing, and it's important for the people to be aware of such changes happening in our communities and also in our local governments. So one thing I want to talk about is how net neutrality affects the common people. So one way is, starting off with regular consumers, one way is through subscription plans. So if you look to the right, you'll see a country in Europe charging an ISP in Europe charging its customers roughly $6 per subscription plan, and this can be of messaging, video, or email. So that would mean that you would have to pay $6 per basically type of thing you want to use on the internet, and that can be very stressful in terms of spending. This could continue towards content regulation, meaning that ISPs can favor more popular platforms while slowing down the speeds of another, and that will be an example of if a lot of people here tend to use Facebook more than Twitter, then ISPs can say, your connection to Twitter won't be as reliable anymore, so you would be pushed towards using Facebook because they're paying more money towards that ISP. So continuing forward, how does this affect local businesses and startups? So ISPs can implement a pay-to-play method, meaning that companies with more money can pay ISPs to grant them faster internet lanes, and vice versa. Again, meaning that if you have more money, you get better speeds, you get more customers. This would lead startups to lag behind as they can't compete with website performance. This leads to a bad user experience, and with slower loading speeds, that turns away customers, and websites tend to start losing money. And this is bad for startups because startups need customers. So what taking away net neutrality would actually do is basically decrease the amount of customers that go to startup websites and making them basically die off and taking away competition between websites online, and you'd have less choice in choosing what you'd like to see, what you like to do online. Continuing onward to students. The internet is the biggest source of free education and self-learning. College students in turn would end up being, college internet in turn would end up being less reliable in that college internet students would have to start paying for college internet speeds because colleges would also have to start paying for faster speeds towards ISPs. By making students have to pay for their access to already free content is going to hurt their tuition levels, in which they'd have to pay more for tuition also. And then there's also a big effect towards students and communities of low income. And as you know, students who come from poor families tend to have struggles in terms of paying for school and college. And not having that internet reliability in terms of studying, turning in homework, would affect their way of basically getting their degrees in school. It would put even more stress in balancing their education and personal lives in a way where many students nowadays can barely afford paying for textbooks. So that would be bad. So what can we do? One way is that we can promote other states to enforce net neutrality laws, as California has already enforced a very strong net neutrality law that's being critiqued by the FCC right now. We have to realize that 76% of Americans support net neutrality, so you're not alone in supporting net neutrality, and don't feel like everyone's against you. One thing we don't realize is that how fast, again, policies can change and laws can change without them knowing, since the thought of contributing to such an important part of society seems so out of reach. And again, we need to promote city voting. In the last DA election, I believe only 23% of Oakland voted for a DA, and that was a big problem, even though a lot of promotion already happened. So if we can promote within our communities even tighter, that would increase fairness and bring up our democracy and our freedom of choice. Again, vote for those who promote your views and ideologies. Don't let someone vote for you, because the outcome would not be what you wanted. And then have an education-first mentality. I've realized, and I think a lot of people realize over the decades, America has been money first and education second in terms of making money would be over education. And that's one of the reasons why we're lagging behind other countries. So if we started locally and promoted education more than money making and company use, I feel like future generations won't lag behind the last generation, and we tend to make less mistakes than we did before. And that's all for my presentation. Oh, and legal doesn't make it right, so that's it.
Thank you, Chibuzo, for that really insightful presentation. Just a quick show of hands. How many people knew about net neutrality before this presentation? Okay. So mostly everyone. Did you know how it would affect you? No? Yeah, well, personally for me, I didn't even know that this thing was going on. I wasn't even in the country when they repealed it. But come to find out, coming back into the country, it seems like internet has gotten a lot slower. Just to get on Google search is like an issue now. But yes, before we move on with our next presentation, please repeat after me, Harambe, let's pull together. Thank you. So next to the podium is Solomon and Chidama with their presentations on the problems and solutions of the economy and housing. No? Schools. Sorry about that. On schools in the Bay Area.
Good afternoon, church. My name is Chidama Ezeokoli, and I am a 12th grader, and I attend Oakland Military Institute.
My name is Solomon. I am a senior at Berkeley High School, and I am 17 years old.
In this presentation, we will be talking about unequal schooling in the Bay Area and the achievement gap between white students and students of color.
This is a very important topic for me because growing up, going to Bay Area schools, being a student of color, you can see, even though it's a diverse area, that there are a lot of systems in place that are still prevalent in people's lives that makes it more challenging for students of color to stay focused on their education compared to white students.
I also chose this topic because growing up in Oakland, being a student of color has had its challenges. And this has affected me because, one, my school is overcrowded, which means we don't have as many resources as a school would have if it was in the Oakland Hills.
All right, we're first going to talk about things in our environment that lead to unequal schooling. So the first being residential segregation. So on the picture on the left, those were the lines of segregation basically in the Bay Area where if you were a person of color, you could not buy a home past a certain street, even if it was on the other side of the street. So in Berkeley, where I live, the cutoff was Martin Luther King Jr. Street, and in parts of Oakland, it was International or East 14th, and they would call these neighborhoods redlined neighborhoods where people of color could buy a home. And on the right, that's the picture of Bay Area today. So you see that the colors are still kind of by themselves. They're still kind of segregated. And the school you go to is based on the school that's closest to you and the school you're zoned for. So some schools in more affluent neighborhoods have more resources than schools in poorer communities.
In the East Bay, neighborhoods with more people of color receive fewer public services and are more likely to have fast food chains, liquor stores, and convenience stores, as opposed to grocery stores selling healthy foods, often called a food desert. High-poverty neighborhoods also have greater exposure to pollution and violent crime. So as you can see on the right, the darker purple graph, that is examples of food deserts in West Oakland and East Oakland.
And this is important for students going to school because, as you know, if you're hungry, you can't really learn as well as if you were more nourished. And there's a lot of situations that could be happening outside of school that could take their attention away from school during certain moments. In Oakland, Oakland is the third most diverse city in America, but its schools are very segregated. So white people in Oakland account for 26% of the population, but only 11% of public school system. So a lot of their kids are going to private schools. And in schools that are public schools that white students go to, they are often the majority. In the chart on the right, we see the difference between the students and the teachers and how the teachers don't reflect the student body. So in Oakland, 30% of the students are African American and 40% are Latino, but the teachers, over 50% are white teachers. And speaking from personal experience, when you have a teacher of color, you feel like I feel more welcome in the class, and I feel like they know where I'm coming from, and that made me more interested to go to class and keep coming to school. So that's a very big topic.
So now we will be talking about the segregation in Oakland schools. In 2014, Hillcrest Elementary in the Rockridge, Claremont area was 9% Black or Hispanic, and East Oakland Pride near Castlemont was 94. College Preparatory School in Oakland is one of the top private high schools in the nation. College prep is 72% white or Asian, only 7% Black, and 7% Latino. 90% or 90 students per grade. Tuition is $43,000 every year. They boast an 100% graduation rate. In 2017, Oakland Unified graduation rates were at 70.3%. For 9,193 public high school students in Oakland, there are 7 high schools, around the 4 times there are at college prep. I feel as if this is an important topic because this also can show how there can be overcrowding in the 7 high schools rather than at college prep with 90 students per grade. Also, the money that they get every year for students make it easier for them to have teachers that can stay at the schools rather than being at a public schools with less funding.
And if they can also use the $43,000 they get from every single student to getting more resources for their students, paying more attention to their students, and keeping teachers there for longer, which can lead to a more stable learning environment for these kids that have the money to afford private schools. And in areas that are more diverse, there is self-segregation, which is the separation of a religious or ethnic group from the rest of the society in a state by the group itself, which can lead to the inability for normal social interaction. So we have 2 examples of this. There are a lot of examples, but we highlighted 2. There are 2 schools in North Oakland. One is called Peralta Academy and one is called Sankofa Academy, and they are only 3 blocks away from each other. But Sankofa Academy is about 70% Black students, 15% Latino students, and Peralta Academy is about 60% white, despite them being within the same school district. And Peralta is said to have higher test scores and less teacher turnover, which comes from the students' parents at Peralta having enough time to go and be a part of their students' education and contacting the school board and getting more resources for their students. And then at my high school, Berkeley High School, there's only 1 high school for all of Berkeley, so it's very diverse, but it's also very segregated. So in some classes, it is all Black and Latino students, all students of color, and then in some of my advanced classes, I might be one of 2 people of color in the room. And this could affect students of color in both situations, because if the student of color is in a majority white classroom, they might feel isolated and less encouraged to take the class. And if they're in a class with majority people of color, students of color, the administration tends to not pay more attention to us because we're so majority people of color and students of color.
Now let's move on to colleges. The universities of California have collective percentage of 4.6 Black students. 30.5% of the country is Black or Latino. Stanford being the top private university in our area is 11% Latino and 3.8% Black. Part of this is the unequal education in K-12 schools that do not receive enough resources. So basically, I would say when you go to K through 12 schools, that determines where you're able to go to college because of the resources that you have. And if you don't, then you'd probably likely end up in a community college.
And there's the schools that you go to from K through 12 can affect your future. It could affect what jobs you are able to attain after school, and how much money you're able to make, and where you can live based on how much money you make. So I think we should really try to spend more money on schools and put that money back into education, because it's a very important for the next generation. That's all from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chidaman Solomon, for that presentation. How's the energy in here? Seen a few people nod off a little bit. Could we have everyone just stand up really quick, just so we could, get energized? This information is vital for our children and our people in our community. All right, we just do a few stretches, get in there. But this information is helpful though, right? Definitely, definitely. All right, so before we begin, please repeat after me. Harambe, let's pull together. Okay, so our next speaker is Philip Rudolph, and he'll be presenting on the economic issues. Philip Rudolph, I lied, sorry.
Hello, my name is Philip Rudolph, and I'm a very recent college graduate from California State University in East Bay. And I'm going to provide a brief discussion on economic patterns and concerns of Alameda County. Gentrification has been discussed frequently in context of the San Francisco Bay Area, and we should all strive to unravel this subject. Displacement is one of the most pressing topics, as established communities may not benefit from the economic upheavals that follow redevelopment. However, the subject is so politically and emotionally charged that one can find difficulty in forming an objective opinion. We strive to discuss economic developments openly so that all people may better acknowledge not only the detriments, but also the benefits associated with changes to our infrastructure. At its best, a region's productivity is enhanced through an elevated abundance of jobs, civic infrastructure, and educational opportunities. At its worst, gentrification can exacerbate historic economic divisions and outright purge the lowest quintiles. Household poverty remains an important discussion, and our community must increase awareness of the difficulties associated with this region. California's households have a higher median annual income than the greater USA at $80,000 compared to $50,000. And while the lowest earners live comparatively better in our community due to a range of available social services, homelessness remains a sincere concern as a result of inadequate housing and career opportunities. Alameda County's homeless population grew from 4,000 to 5,600 between 2015 and 2017. And a breakdown of the most at-risk groups should indicate our targets of priority. 1/3 are Black, 2/3 are male, and 2/3 have a disability or illness. We hope to remove the stigmas associated with poverty and homelessness to help both established residents and our new arrivals. Redevelopment can be beneficial if all residents in our region can tap into the newly generated wealth. The vast amount of equity that is generated in our region can allow the profits to be reinvested back into our communities with focus on assisting the lowest earners. Let's strive to see the whole picture of economic development so that we can resist negative gentrification and support economic revitalization together with our politicians. There are a number of notable solutions that can ensure equal opportunity for our citizens. And that's all I'm going to be discussing. Someone else will cover the rest.
All right, next is Alex Rudolph, and he will be presenting on the solutions to the economic problems.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Rudolph. I am currently in the 11th grade of St. Mary's College High School in Berkeley, and I will be speaking about some of the solutions to the economic issues that were just mentioned to you. So my first part will focus on solutions that the Bay Area is currently working on. So without further ado, I will go right into it. The first one is probably a very simple one, but that is to help the supply of housing meet the demand of housing. So just construct more homes for people to enter them. And to give you a good view as to the current difference between the supply of housing and the demand of housing, currently 1.8 million new homes need to be constructed by the year 2025 to meet the current demand. And so the hope is that if the supply meets the demand, then that will basically help in some of the homelessness and poverty we mentioned here by bringing down the housing for everyone. The second part of this is that the homes that are currently being constructed to help people are not only housing that are apartments or regular housing units, it's also a type called an efficiency dwelling unit. The goal of these is that it's basically a housing unit that is smaller than the average apartment or housing unit, but are cheaper to construct and are also faster to construct. And these are automatically constructed with housing at market value. The next part I will mention is Alameda County currently has a housing trust fund. The objective of the fund is to basically help people who have a difficulty getting housing and keeping housing keep it. Because supply is one end of helping people get housing, but you also need to use services to help the most vulnerable in our population. So notably, it helps with down payment assistance and housing preservation loans, so helping people get a home and be able to keep it if they run on hard times. Another one, well, I just mentioned this, but it helps the most vulnerable, notably the chronically homeless in our population. And the third part is it also supports the first point I mentioned in that it helps provide funding for housing that is for the below market value or efficiency dwelling units I mentioned. And my last point I will mention are the current parking policies that are in place in the Bay Area. Because for all new housing developments, parking must be constructed with it to allow those that live with it to be able to park near their home if they have a car. However, the current parking policies basically set parking for housing near major transit areas to nothing, so that the housing there is easier to construct and also costs less money to rent into. And I will now mention the next part of my presentation, which are several housing policies that I believe the Bay Area should pursue in the future. The first one is to basically an expansion of my very first point, but to construct even more housing developments, because it currently still won't meet that 1.8 million home demand that I mentioned to you earlier, even with the current housing developments. So the goal is to basically construct even more so it can actually reach that goal. And the next goal I will mention is basically to help restrict ownership on vacant homes or homes that that no one lives in at this moment in time. So the goal here is basically if someone owns multiple homes, like if they have one house and they have another one but aren't renting it out, or basically are seek to rent it out but aren't doing the proper measures to make sure that happens, the goal here is to provide incentives for people to either double their efforts in getting the house to rent out, bringing it into the market, or just incentivize people to sell it to either someone else or another program that can help also bring it into the market. To help you visualize it, in 2016, in Oakland alone, over 10,000 homes were vacant, so just to help you visualize it. And if it takes the form of a tax, as in if they have vacant property, they have to pay a tax for it, though other incentives also work, it can also fund other affordable housing projects. And a note here is that that this presentation only focuses on the housing aspects to help in some of the economic issues, but there are many other solutions out there. It's just that I found this one to be the central one. And that will be all from me.
Thank you, Alex. That was very informational. I think that with your solutions, there's never really one way to do things, which you highlighted. Next, we're actually going to go into asking questions and sharing our insights.
So we ask each person to take a moment and pause for reflection. We ask all to review your notes. After our community members respond, you will have time to write and share your thoughts. So for community members' response, we welcome your trust, we share your purpose, we support the collective creativity and the need for our collective efforts. We remind ourselves of our strategy success. We strive to create solutions not by creating division, but by creating dialogue. Our responses do not signal disagreement, but is recognition that we are listening and are willing to work together to clarify our issues, promote understanding, and to work towards solutions. So please take 90 seconds to review your thinking, and next, be prepared to share.
So you're going to go ahead with the question now, or? Okay. About affordable housing, that is number one on the list of, it's like one of three things that the mayor is working on. And part of the thing with our organization, Bay Area Community Services, she works intimately. Thank you. Okay, like I was saying, in Oakland, Mayor Libby Schaaf, she works with us, not just with staff, but with actual clients. She is hosting, I guess, on the 16th, a dinner for several of my clients and some other clients as well who are currently staying in transitional housing. In terms of some of the things that were brought up or that made me think about things, I took some notes. The first thing was that there are about 2,000 beds, but over 3,000 people who are homeless permanently right now. And, something to consider in terms of how we're going to deal with that issue because there's just not enough housing. And one of the ideas that she came up with was to have people, private citizens, open their house to people who are permanently, or not permanently, who are homeless on the street. Some of you guys may have mentioned, haven't mentioned yet, but about Section 8. Section 8 in Oakland, I guess it was Contra Costa County, but last time I read, that there was 1,000 spots open, and only 14,000 people applied for vouchers, Section 8 vouchers. And, something to consider when you yourself are, looking for housing or looking for housing for a loved one or somebody before moving out of the area.
Okay, so we have a few questions.
Sure.
We're going to open up the floor for a few questions. So the first question on housing is, what can be done to motivate people who own rental properties currently charging less than market rate to continue to rent their properties out?
That's a good question. It's a personal decision. A lot of the people need to see that it's a win-win situation, that the people who are homeless or in transitional housing can afford it. There's different ways that they can afford it. One's through general assistance, GA, where they receive maybe $336 a month or $654 a month, depending on how long they've been on GA. And they can use that to pay towards finding housing or Social Security. A number of my clients have make over $1,000 in Social Security Administration monies that could be used to rent a room or a studio or one bedroom.
Okay. Another question, is there actually no, that one is tying into something else. How can we prevent other states from sending their
I know where you're headed. Yeah, giving them one-way tickets.
Okay.
to Oakland.
Oh yes, to California,
sending
especially
them to
the Bay
church,
Area.
this great church of ours. Yeah, they can't do anything about it. Yeah, that's nothing you can do except deal with them where they are when they come into the system. There is a system where, if they receive assistance from one or a nonprofit organization that deals with homelessness, we keep track of them, and so we can follow the progression where they are in the system, and that's one of the ways that you work with them where they are, and it's called harm reduction, but it's putting them in a situation where they can matriculate from transitional housing into permanent housing.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions on housing? Okay, we have one come right up. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Can Oakland push for Mercy Housing to make multiple unit housing for the needy? Question?
The Association of Bay Area Governments is composed of every county in the Bay Area and composed of every city in the Bay Area. About 100, 110, 107, something like that, cities. And there are 9, 10 counties, I can't remember how many, but all the counties and all the cities are in ABAG. ABAG has a regional policy council that's coming up with strategies associated with addressing the housing crisis as well as addressing the homeless crisis. ABAG's looking to put together a housing trust fund that would be for the entire Bay Area. So I think ABAG's on top of looking at the crisis. So I think that's the best response I can give at the moment to that question.
You know that St. Columba owns these 2 buildings across the street? They are Section 8, so you know that Section 8 is a government program where you pay 30% of your income adjusted for rent. So people pay over there, seniors pay about $170 to $250 for a 1-bedroom unit across the street. So the contract rent on the rent might be $1,200, and so if you pay $200, the government pays the rest. That pays the mortgage on the place and keeps it running. So we own these 2 buildings. So right now, St. Columba Development Corporation, which is a part of St. Columba Parish, we own the first building and half of the other building. We are currently, as a way of addressing this housing issue, we can't do the big stuff, but what we can do is we're looking into re-syndicating the first building. So we have discovered that over the life of this past 25 years of Thea Bowman, we've been paying the mortgage. So we can re-syndicate and refinance and pull the funds out of that to keep the sustainability of that building so that it will always remain affordable for seniors. And that's any senior who comes as on the waiting list and gets in there. But what we can do is pull several $1 million out of that in the refinancing with the goal of purchasing the property on the other side of us over here to address the affordability issue. Now, we had thought about going and getting, Mercy Housing or any of the other Bridge Housing or Mid-Peninsula or any of them to come and do this for us. But Pam, where's Pam? Of course, she's not here when you need her. Oh, walk through the door, sister, just at the right minute. So we have gone and looked at some of these, to get some of these white companies, because they're all mostly white people, and they come in and they have solutions. They have easy solutions. The Sisters of Mercy could come over here, take our few $1 million, and do a cookie cutter and put it on that property. But we have decided we're not going to do that. That's the easy way to do it. If we're able to get this financing from the resource that we have over there, that we would involve the community, you, in deciding, and we would want you as the community to invest in not keeping people poor, because the people over there have to be poor to live there, but to have people have affordable housing and affordable equity, so that a student or a young person could do what one of the programs that Alameda has, is to get people into the buildings, have them pay half of the rent or the mortgage so that they have equity to grow wealth within the local community, and that you don't have other people from the outside. So I would like Pamela just to come and finish that thought for me, because this is something that's actively happening right now. We haven't talked a lot about it. But one thing I need to say to you is, from the moment that St. Columba would get that several $1 million out of this refinancing, if it happens, and we get an okay for a building, it is 5 years. From the moment you have the idea and the check in hand, it takes 5 years, because I worked in nonprofit housing development, Mercy Housing, to you actually hand somebody a key to go into a building. So there's no quick solutions to this unless you have mega millions, or Nate Miley can find a gold mine in the Oakland Hills or something. But beyond that, it is really, it's a very difficult process, and it's very complicated. But I want you to finish that thought on what we were talking about.
So this is an exciting program that's happening here at St. Columba, but I just want to say that this afternoon we are going to be breaking up into small groups, and the young people are going to be leading us into conversations on the different topics that they've presented on today, including housing. So if you have questions on the housing issue that Father Aiden brought up, we can discuss that in small groups or afterwards, but we want to be respectful of your time and the young people today, so we're going to continue with the program right now. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the last question that I got on housing. How does affordable housing work? A lot of the time, what one says is affordable actually isn't affordable.
I think I'm. Okay. Affordable housing works from my perspective. It works by getting on waiting lists. That's one way. One way is applying for Section 8, and hoping you're one of the percentage that makes it, makes the cut to getting a Section 8. And even then, it could take 3 to 4, maybe 5 years until you actually land a place.
Oh, wow. Okay. Just to remember, if you have any more questions on housing, please fill out the card just so we can maximize our time. Thank you. Okay, so going into education, how do we reinvest and revitalize our education system? And this is including tech, trade, affordability, and accessibility. Anyone free to answer? Any thoughts? It doesn't have to be right. Okay, thank you. Next question. Does a college prep academy teach on a higher level than a regular school? And second question, are college prep schools primarily private and therefore charge tuition? So for the second one. Okay, yes. So maybe I could give a better explanation. So for the teaching curriculum, usually teaching curriculum is different for private schools and public schools. I wouldn't necessarily say that College Prep Academy teach on a higher level. I think they teach on a level that they're supposed to teach, and I think that a lot of schools, primarily in the Bay Area, that are public schools are very underfunded and don't have the ability to teach at the level that they're supposed to teach. Public schools have a standard level that they're supposed to teach everyone, as opposed to private schools who teach either extra things, who have the ability to teach extra things, and the standard level that they're supposed to teach. And then college prep schools are not all private. A majority of them are, and those that are do charge tuition. Those that are public charge like a certain percentage of tuition, but it's not as much as a private college prep school.
If I could just add one thing to that question. In talking to some teachers in the Oakland Unified School District, some teachers are frustrated that they can't teach, and so it's not necessarily whether or not a college prep type of private school and a public school are that much different. Sometimes it's the atmosphere and the discipline that's internal to the school and to the classroom. So some teachers have complained that they can't teach because either the administration isn't setting an environment for them to teach to children or youth that want to learn. So I just want to make sure that there's that comment put out there.
Okay, thank you. And then we're just going to do one more question, and I think this is geared towards our youth group and I more especially. So the question is, what is the city doing to help those who have graduated from college find jobs? Let me know, because I'm trying to find a job. Any answers?
You can define your own companies. You learned a lot of stuff in school. You learned about physics, you learned about history, you learned about a lot of things. If not individually, collectively. You could develop your own corporations. You never have to worry about getting fired, right? A lot of people get jobs and sweating it by Christmas time, right? You are in a golden opportunity. So you guys can really just like talk to people. Sit down and just believe that you can be these companies. Apple, all those companies started in garages. Why can't they start in your garage or on your front porch? You're smart. Don't be afraid. The only reason why people will tell you not to do it is because they are afraid to do it. You will never hear an entrepreneur tell you, don't do it. And if we walk in faith, you ask yourself, what's the best decision for me to make? Whichever decision requires the most faith. That's the way to go. God wants you to have a testimonial to what great things you're about to do. Just believe that you can do it. Don't worry about a job. You got your job.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Next, we're going to segue into seeking solutions, Kuumba. And this is seeking solutions for the issues that we addressed.
We now wish to share our view of the issues and create solutions. So we're going to create a group of about 5 to 6 people and decide on a topic that you want to discuss and what solutions do you wish to move forward those issues. Write your issue and your creative solution on an index card and choose a person or a pair to share your ideas. Stand with your group as your speakers share.
just to kind of move it along a little bit here, if you can start wrapping it up, because we'll begin in just a couple more minutes. Once again, as we try to move on the program, if you could start to wrap it up, and we will begin shortly in about 2 minutes.
No, it's fine.
Oh, you want me to move here?
All right, everyone, let's reconvene. Just 20 more seconds just to get out what you have to say, and we'll come back. All right, everyone, so we're going to get back to the group. Okay, which group is ready to speak and share out on the issues and solutions that they came up with? Ooh, we have one. All right. We have a group that's ready to talk about their issue. You can just say your name, school, and the issue and solution.
So,
all right, everyone, let's respect our friend up here.
my name is Stacy Faye, and our problem was about schools. And it's like where in math class, the teacher will teach it to you in a certain way, but it's like some kids, they know how to do math in their own way, but they get the right answers. But because they didn't get to the answer in the way that they were taught, then it's wrong. So it's like the teacher should let the kids, they should let the kids explain it to each other and then teach each other, basically, because that's much easier than only doing it one way than other ways. So.
Thank you for sharing. All right, which group wants to speak out next? Who wants to volunteer as tribute? All right, group in the back? The middle? Which one?
The card I just put down.
Which one is that? Homelessness. This one?
Oh, I have to present it? Where's
Okay, the next group.
I had the pleasure of working with Philip, and our topic was homelessness. In order for the homelessness to be in homes, they need to be re-educated. They've been out in the open. They really don't know how to live in houses. So my solution would be for them to have classes on how to actually live in a house. In other words, to be re-educated. And then once they go through that process, get some type of certificate, then the next step would be for them to get into some type of housing.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to share what their group went over?
Stand up if you would like to present.
Hello, everyone. So I actually have two solutions. I, too, worked with Paulette, the person who just spoke. Originally, before switching to homelessness, it was actually affordable housing. So the two solutions for this one on how do you incentivize people to rent their homes below market value. So the first solution is to just let them raise the rents to market value so that the landlords themselves are able to pay for their expenses. And the other one is to give the landlords tax breaks if they rent below market value so that they can also pay for their expenses.
Okay, I have to bring it close. I was once the coordinator for community and housing and shelter services for Alameda County, and also the continuum of care, which included housing. And one of the things that we did at that particular time with those who came quickly into our county and needed housing, we would put them in a 28-day situation where they would have food and shelter and that nature. Then the county, along with some other cities and counties, started programs building a few things. Like in Alameda, the city of Alameda, there were housing that for low income. You would first go through the system of GA or whatever program we had going on at that time, and then you would go to this low housing. They would send you over there, and you could purchase a house or a condo at a low cost, but you could not sell it you can only sell it at that particular cost that you paid for it. It wouldn't go up, so it would stay affordable for a number of people. So I don't know if they still have those programs, but that was one tiny solution to homelessness.
Rafael and I were talking about schools and talking about situations where groups of students are gathered together, pulled out of schools or pulled out of classrooms and grouped together and form a high-need unit. And that those teachers sometimes aren't aware of the group that is pulled together. And so that those teachers need a lot more resources. So if you create a high-need classroom, equity says that you need to give them special or more resources in order to make sure that they're successful. My own reflection on housing is from Father Kwame today and about sacrifice. I live in a house that has multiple rooms that aren't being used, and I heard that the mayor of Oakland was talking about people bringing in people, and I heard Paulette saying that people need to be trained, and who's going to train them if we don't train them? Who's going to house them if we don't house them? Where does my sacrifice start in terms of what I need to do or should do to prevent the crisis from continuing? I think Philip said, or somebody said that, an incredible amount of housing is needed, and I have space in my home, so I have to figure out how I'm going to sacrifice or what I'm going to be willing to do to make a difference.
I'm Margaret Roncalli, and I'm putting us on the spot here. We were talking about education, and one of the things that came up was looking at public-private partnerships. And I'm not going to say any more about that because there were some others who were saying something.
I feel like I got stopped by the police. Oh yeah, right. I'm juggling, okay? So the thing is that it was brought up that certain companies. Well, we have a person in our group here who is looking to hire like people in the sciences, like engineering, and then but she says it's difficult to find students with those kind of backgrounds. And then so we started, we did a quick review over what's available, and a lot of times, you're not going to have students exposed to the sciences like the way the kids in, say, Kuwait and the Mideast do. I mean, their whole way of thinking is everything's fact-based, and they go through that repetition, which is why so many of those students end up in medical sciences and those kind of things, engineering, where because our teachers are so underpaid, you're not going to find a second-grade teacher wanting to get into teaching chemistry at an earlier time. But if you have a kid who's exposed to chemistry at the second grade, maybe they're thinking celestial physics by the time they get to the 10th grade, you see? And so it's that jump, which is why other countries are so attractive to corporations who are based in the biomedical fields and engineering fields. So we're hoping that corporations can come in and like sponsor initiatives or programs. Don't necessarily have to, I'm not trying to sound like I'm on a soapbox saying, forget what the politicians say. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, like back on what Maurice was saying, is that, what sacrifice can we make to help it along the way? Can you create situations where if you just know people in corporations and say, hey, we have like 5,000 students that need, funding for engineering. There are 501c3s. They dump their money into that at the end of the year. The next thing you know, you have your money to help those students. So it's not always sitting back and waiting for someone to do something. Sometimes it's just sitting down in a living room or at a Starbucks and coming up with ideas, and this the heart to want to just get it done. So that's collectively what at the last minute they gave me the microphone, had me say.
I'll add to that because I'm a bit more militant in my thought process, and I just feel that we should not continue to allow corporations And I grew up here in the Bay Area. I lived all across the country, and there are definitely significant differences of how, across the country, of how we're educating our children, and somewhere along the line, we have created a gap.
And I think that in high school, there's a lot of talk about college, and that's the only path to going success and money and stuff. So they're pushing these college requirement classes. You have to take math, English, history, science every single year. And I feel like a lot of people who don't necessarily have the money for college or don't want to pursue college are just like, I'm not going to pay attention in class because I'm not going to college, so there's no point for me to pay attention in this class. Whereas if we had like classes that were more based on what students wanted to do, they would be more interested coming to class and getting their education as well as filling those college requirements if they wanted to.
Okay, thank you. Oh, do we have one more?
Can I just
Yeah,
quick?
no, go
Because
ahead.
I graduated from college, and it did not prepare me for the job market. I came out, and I was no more qualified for a job, basically, than when I had gone in.
Same.
I could write really good papers. If you hear of anyone who wants to pay me to write papers, like, I would be happy to talk to them. There are just not that much demand for some close reading in the job market. So so I ended up becoming a programmer, but it was like my own thing, because this was before the people figured out that that was a thing you could do. And what I've learned since I've become a programmer is even if you get a computer science degree, you are not prepared to go into the job market and be a programmer, because they're teaching you to do computer science, which is not what we do every day. And so the people who are coming out of like year-long boot camp programs, whatever, who have used computers, because we're younger and lots of us have encountered those now, like, you're better prepared coming out of a year-long program designed to get you a job than you are going to one of these 4-year programs designed to be academic institution things. And so one of the things that I think is interesting is talk about high school and is like, what is the goal of going to college? What are we getting out of it?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. We appreciate your feedback. We're going to segue into one of our last parts. I am because we are, and because we are, therefore I am.
I am not successful unless we are successful. We will practice unity. Harambe, let's pull together. We will practice. Harambe, let's pull together. We will practice collective work and responsibility. Harambe, let's pull together. We will practice cooperative economics. Harambe, let's pull together. We will know our purpose. Harambe, let's pull together. We will be creative. Harambe, let's pull together. We will be faithful. Harambe, let's pull together. We will be faith-filled. Harambe, let's pull together.
In closing this youth conference, dare to struggle and sacrifice and gain the strength that comes from struggle and sacrifice. You have the blessing of your ancestors with you. A person so blessed need fear nothing. Go and be blessed and extend the blessing to others. Before we close, I would like to thank Nate Wiley for being here and for helping us understand a little bit more about housing. Do you have any final words?
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to come and participate and listen. Yeah, these are challenging subject matters, and I appreciate the fact that young people are struggling with them. And hopefully as a result of struggling over these matters, we'll be able to make some progress. And I think it's just to continue to be mindful of everyone needs to vote. Everyone needs to vote.
Okay, and then one more time for the culture and for the promise. I am because we are, and because we are, therefore I am. I am not successful unless we are successful. Harambe, let's pull together. One more time. Harambe, let's pull together. So we're just gonna briefly just go over some solutions that we came up with, and then we'll be free to leave.
So we'd like your cards, even if they're just partially written on, because we still feel like we have work to do. The solutions that we've come up with, or at least have given us some things to think about: private citizens opening up their homes to help the homeless, harm reduction, continue and increase low-income housing for seniors, affordable housing locally at St. Columba or through St. Columba. To receive affordable housing first, get on a waiting list, and it can really take 4 or 5 years. Education, private schools teach extra curriculum above the standard curriculum. Environment set up for teachers to be able to teach, walk in faith, and have the courage to believe and just do it. Schools, teachers need to be sensitive to different, diverse ways of acquiring knowledge, no one way. Topic: homelessness needs, people that are homeless need classes, re-education, to attend classes to receive some certification. A homeless person can receive help with a place to live. 28-day situation where a homeless person would receive immediate housing and food. Topic: schools, pull out to form groups to receive extra support and achieve success with studies. Need for people to step up to the plate and help a homeless person housing in their homes if they feel it's right. Need for children to be exposed to science, technology, engineering, and math, the STEMs. Corporations need to help fund science and education. Community issue, preparing issues. Corporations need to be pressured to help our students. Education: some students lose interest in their education because they have other interests other than a college degree. There's a need for more choices to keep all students engaged in their education. What is the goal of college? Let's pull together. You have the blessings of your ancestors. Go forth, everyone, and everyone needs to vote. Thank you very much for your participation today. Can I have all the young adults, young people come up? These young people have been a continued blessing to this community. They have provided a model for us to move forward. Whenever you hear something in the news that is less than hopeful, I hope you will gain this image in your mind. I would like to call up some of our future young people. So if you would come up, please. Come on up there. Come on up there. Because these people are going to be the people that receive the torch. So our young people receive the torch from you and from the support from this community, and they are passing the torch on to other folks who will continue. So the challenges that we have will be solved. They may not be solved by us sitting in these chairs, but they will be solved by the young people that are standing before you with your help. They stand on your shoulders. Thank you very much.
Nate one more time. I'd like to take a second and thank Nate Miley one more time for coming out. This is, and one of the big reasons that he came out to support our youth, but you can see the number of chairs that are up there, and others have been invited. I don't want to put them on blast, that said they would be here, and they're not here. And so for that, I really, really want to thank Nate for showing up on a Sunday. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Nate. Appreciate it.
Hello? Before everyone leaves, if you see